I'm Ross, a curious parent.
And I'm John, an education expert.
This is From the Sidelines.
Bite-sized study tips to help you help them through.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of From the Sidelines. In case you've just joined us or you've missed previously, so we have three pieces of information to help you help them through. We have the podcast. We also have a short film, which is a tutorial video clip almost, 1 minute, kind of 2 minute clip that will give you nuggets of information, short, sharp, and to the point. And we also have an infographic, which is essentially a design piece with some key information in there that you can look, view, and hopefully will help you in terms of supporting your child at this key critical time. So John, good to see you again. What's the topic today? What are we covering?
Right, well, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to get this right, a false sense of familiarity.
A little bit of a tongue twister. I don't think I'll say that too much, if you don't mind, throughout this episode. False sense of familiarity.
Right, well done.
What does it mean?
Right, well, what it really means is that actually sometimes when we mistake recognition and familiarity for real learning. So let me unpack that for you a little bit. Think about when we were children ourselves, or as adults now, if you reread something or you see something that you've learned before, your brain recognizes it. And unfortunately, our brain then says, I recognize it, it feels familiar, therefore I know it and I've learned it. And that can be quite dangerous. So that's ultimately what it is. It's that, and again, if we take words by word, a false sense of familiarity. It's fooling you that you know it. And yeah, that's ultimately what this is. So it's hopefully giving parents now this idea of how can they guard against that.
Okay. And ultimately, why is that such a bad thing then? To be tricked into knowing something, does that not kind of mean you do know it? Or am I missing a point here?
If I pick up on the perfect word that you mentioned there, tricked into.
Okay.
Your brain is tricking you in thinking that you know it. So what that means is that you don't know it. That's the danger. But you think you do. So what it does, if let's imagine you reread something, you recognize it, you think, oh, I know this, and you, like I always say when I talking to teachers and students in school, you have this yeah moment where you're nodding along and going, yeah, I know this, yeah, and your brain is doing very little work because you are thinking you're remembering it, and the danger is that it creates a heightened sense of confidence that I know this topic, yeah, and you don't know it because actually there's no way you'd be able to write that down on a bit of paper without having seen that previously. So you don't really know it,
okay, but
you think it's familiar, so your confidence rises, you think you know it, and nothing really happens in your brain. So yeah, it can be very, very dangerous.
So how does that happen? How do you get to that point where...
Okay, so the reason it happens, and this is for parents really to think about, that they need to be guarding against this and they need to be watching out for this. When it happens when your child is rereading some notes. So let's imagine that you're my child, you've got an exam next week, and you go to your room and do some revision. And your revision consists of rereading some of your notes, whether that's your own notes in a textbook, whether it's notes that you've written down on a bit of paper, whether it's a revision guide or a knowledge organizer, and you start to reread it. So you're reading things and you're going, oh, yeah, I know this. And your brain isn't doing any work. Now, if we think back to a previous episode where we talked about retrieval practice, and another episode we talked about flashcards, what did I say, Ross? I'm gonna challenge you now on some retrieval. What was the key part? I said the magic was in what?
In the action of doing it.
Perfect. That physical action of actually doing it. You've remembered something.
Get in.
Well done.
Thank you.
I feel proud. Yeah. I feel like I've achieved something in passing that knowledge on to you.
And it wasn't on here, by the way.
But so it's the physical act of doing that. Now, when you're rereading notes, and if you're not doing retrieval, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
So your brain is doing very little work, almost nothing at all, because you start to skim read the words. You think you know what's coming next. You're nodding along and you're kind of, yeah, I know this. And there's very little happening in your brain. So in terms of what we call your cognitive demands are very low. And when your cognitive demands are very low, nothing's happening in your brain. The cogs aren't turning that fast. You're not really doing a lot. There's no real heavy lifting that your brain's doing. So you ultimately don't learn much. However, you probably spend the same amount of time rereading notes as you would have done if you were quizzing yourself. So it's actually really, really inefficient. It takes the same length of time and nothing goes in. So actually, it's a really, really poor sense of study. Now, the problem is, for lots of us as parents and adults, that's probably how we revised ourselves, or maybe even how we were taught to revise ourselves. So it's not that we're negligent as parents thinking that that's a good way to study. Our reference point is, what did we do when we were at school? And for lots of us, that's what we did, because either we were told or there wasn't an education around, like what we're doing now, how to best, how to study in the best possible ways. So it's about understanding that as parents and then educating your child, or when you're spotting it, saying to them, listen, this doesn't work because, and give them the why, give them a little bit of science about how, if your brain's not doing much, then nothing's going to be going in.
Because that's the tricky bit, isn't it? That ultimately, parents and carers and whoever the adult may be in home environment, with the young person, with a child, looking at them reading through books and notes and kind of having that all out in front of them on the table and studying that, if you like, it does create the impression of study. It creates the impression that, they are doing what they need to do. And so I suppose the question there is, instead of that, what are we asking the adult to do with their child then to make it work?
And you're absolutely right in terms of that. It does feel and look like there's a lot of study happening, and they feel busy, and they look like, like you said, they've got things all over the desk. They've got guides, they've got pens, they've got post-it notes. For all intents and purposes, if you took a picture of that desk or them at their desk, you would assume that they're working and learning.
Looks good.
Absolutely. But this is why we're doing this, isn't it? Yeah. To actually let people in on that, find that actually there's a little bit more knowledge that we need in terms of the strategies they're doing. So you asked me what should they do instead. So going back to a previous episode, retrieval, quizzing, asking them questions. Now, either you get them to do it themselves, so they self-quiz, and there's a few topics we've got coming up in future episodes that we're going to really spell out some real high quality strategies that they can do that self-quizzing. But if you want to get involved as a parent, just ask them questions. Ask them to tell you what they've learned. Ask them to summarize what they've just read. Ask them to write out a paragraph or 3 or 4 lines or some bullet points on the main key points of what they've read. And remove their study aid when you're doing that. Yeah. So remove the revision guide, remove the flashcards, make it difficult. And again, we're going to talk about this in a future episode. Make it desirably difficult. We're not making it so hard that it ends up in a bit of a temper tantrum and you have a bit of an argument over it. But actually, right, you've read this now, or you're telling me you know this, you've got this false sense of familiarity, you've got this confidence that you know this. Let's check how much you know then. I'm going to shut the book. I'm going to remove the revision guide. You're going to either talk me through what you've learned, so physically, do it by speaking to me. That might be easier than writing it down. Or I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes, and you're going to write down all of the key points you can remember. Let me tell you, there's a big, big difference between what they think they can remember and what they can actually put on paper, and that's sometimes quite frightening. And if you want to do that yourself to see the difference, if you take a book that you're reading, and if you read a couple of pages of a book and then put it down, and immediately, almost a minute after, get a bit of paper and see how much you can write down, you'll be quite shocked actually at what you think you could remember. And actually then, oh, hang on a second, I can't, I've hit a bit of a brick wall. And again, it's that false sense of familiarity. Your eyes, your brain is fooling you into, I know this, I've read this. I've just read it, like I've literally just read it 30 seconds ago, and I'm struggling to now recall it. So it just gives you a bit of a sense check and an acid check of kind of, just because we are digesting it and reading it at a surface level doesn't always mean that we've actually properly understood it in order to recall it at a later date.
And some of the materials as such, the resources that you mentioned briefly, so we mentioned about flashcards around the retrieval aspect. So our key supporting partner is Collins, which obviously is amazing, and they have some of these materials available, don't they, as well?
Absolutely. So it can help parents, immensely. Yeah. You don't have to go out and buy resources. Like we've always said, that this is our strategies. Hopefully, are very easy, free to everyone. Yeah. But if you wanted to feel like you wanted to add to the resources by getting a study guide or a guide with some practice questions in, that's a great way of doing that, because a lot of these study guides finish with, the back half of it has practice questions that are written in the exact style of the exam board. So it's not that you're coming up with the questions and you're thinking, well, but I don't know what questions to ask. Well, actually, all of these guides have questions in. So you can work through those. Either your child can work through it self-quizzing, or you can work through them, supporting them by reading the questions out, mixing them up in different orders, and at least you know that the type of questions, and more importantly, not just the type of questions, but the type of words and the key words that you're using, whether that's a command word, for instance, analyze, describe, list, those type of things and the differences that those words mean, or the key vocabulary that comes with that subject that you're using, those things. So it can be very, very helpful to wear that. You don't need to, you can do it without it, but equally it might be something that takes your level of kind of quizzing with your child to the next level, because you are getting, questions and things written by experts already. So you feel safe in the knowledge that the questions you're asking are at the right level, I suppose, intensity level and difficulty level, to make sure that you are challenging your child to be the very best.
Awesome. So not only could I say false sense of familiarity, but we've understood it and we know what it is. And as with all of this, tried to give practical ideas and tools and techniques to you guys to help them through. One of the things that we are really conscious about is we want to hear from you. So if you are able to tell us on social media, to tag us, to give us the updates of how things are going, how some of these tips and techniques and the tricks that John's providing are helping you, it would be absolutely awesome. And we genuinely would love to see that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we'd love to see it. And I think it'd be really nice for people to, whether it's just a comment, this has worked, or this, or I'm still trying this, whether it's a photograph of some quizzing happening. And one thing I'd say on that is that just because you try it once and it doesn't work, or it might not work, or it's difficult, doesn't mean it's never going to work. So keep trying. We're the adults. We know how things work. It might be that your son or daughter is tired that night, so nothing was going to work. It might be that they have just had a stressful day or whatever it is. Keep trying, because these are tried and tested strategies that we know that work, that I know certainly from an education point of view works across global boundaries, doesn't matter which country we're in. So stick at it, and hopefully you'll find those kind of green shoots after one or two times doing it. But yeah, please let us know, because we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, John. And with always, these do link, topics do link, so please do take a look at the other podcasts, the short films, and the infographics. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.